Hi, I'm Ellen Gunning, and my business is the PR Training Academy. I'm also a member of the Executive Committee of EADL, the European Association for Distance Learning. In this short series, I'm chatting to fellow EADL members about their businesses and about how they've been affected by the coronavirus. Today, I'm chatting with Tony Marks, who's the Chief Executive of 2020 Project Management. Thanks for joining me, Tony.
Good morning, Ellen.
Now, I want to talk to you about your business. You're based in Aberdeen in Scotland, and you look after specifically oil and gas, nuclear, defence, aerospace industries. Tell me what it is you do and how the business came about.
Sure. We started the company in 2003 with myself and Graham Chapman, who's still our Director of Learning and Development. And we started out by looking at combining our own experience, which fell within project management and within learning and development. So we concluded that we should set up a project management training company because this combined those backgrounds. And initially we started in part of the oil industry in Aberdeen, specifically the subsea sector, and started to deliver more and more classroom traditional programs out to companies in that sector. It was quite interesting. That led us really right from the start to doing a lot of international work in all the major oil capitals of the world. And we carried on pretty much in that vein for a number of years. And then we started to diversify into other sectors. Some of the companies that were in the oil sector were in other sectors already. So we had a fairly easy step into engineering, construction, nuclear, transport, logistics, aerospace and defence, but primarily sectors that will involve large, complex, capital-based projects, where there was an appetite for the kind of classroom courses that we ran. We run accredited courses from the main professional bodies, and increasingly we started to try and introduce e-learning and online learning components to those with a certain amount of success. And so certainly up until last year, about 10% of our business, perhaps 15, was online learning. But for the most part, it was still classic classroom training.
And were you actually traveling the world teaching these courses yourself? Did you have a team in different locations around the world? How did it work for you?
It was a team. We've got a team of dedicated project management experts and facilitators that travel to those destinations. We have got some partnerships in various locations where we do a lot, like Houston, but essentially it involved a lot of travel. So it was a lot of travel, a lot very traditional training. And whilst it was good fun, we'd been trying to convince our clients to look more at blended learning options increasingly. So at least getting some of the content across online to reduce the amount of time in the classroom up until last year when the world was normal.
But those industries will be quite conservative, so I'd say they pushed back against you a fair bit.
Yeah, they did. We had, and we also found some geographical differences. So we had a lot of problems getting any uptake in it in North America, whereas South America, for example, were more open to it. So there seemed to be some cultural differences, different regions more willing to look at it than others. And in fact, we went on to translate some of our products into a number of different languages, the main languages in the sectors we worked in as well, but still never really got it beyond about 10-15% in terms of our total sales.
And you said that the courses that you teach are all professionally recognized. So were the exams taken online or were they taken physically?
No, and that was one of the problems that we had, is that for the most part, the exams had to be taken physically. So in different parts of the world, you could go to networks of test centers that already existed, which made that easier. But it was another complication for us in terms of internationalizing our online products because of these physical exams. And one of the main professional bodies that we work for is the Association for Project Management. They just were piloting and introducing an online exam for the very basic fundamental qualification as we got to the year end last year. But that was a major obstacle.
And I presume now, you said you started that online or blended learning had become 10-15% of your business, even though you were pushing it to be an awful lot more.
Yeah.
Suddenly coronavirus happens, and I presume all classroom training stops overnight worldwide.
Yeah, it was extremely sudden, so towards the end of March, all in about a week to 10 days, all our planned work was cancelled. So we really sat there looking at quite an empty order book, and a degree of initial panic as well about what that meant. So we looked at the options. For us, there were really only two options. One was to temporarily close the door, furlough everyone, and wait for things to return to normal, whatever that is. We took the other option, which was we threw ourselves into a mixture of promoting the online options, particularly to furloughed staff of the corporates that we work for, and also redeveloping all our classroom courses very rapidly into virtual classroom courses. Now, we'd done some experimentation on this. We had some of our guys COLF accredited, which is certificate in online facilitation, so that they knew about instructional design for virtual classroom. And we'd already started to build some internal capability on the pure e-learning side. So we really just threw everything at that in terms of our own resources. And in terms of our business development team, they went on a mission to try and convert all the cancelled business instead into either e-learning or virtual classroom or a combination of the two. And it was, they got a pretty good and pretty fast response. We're probably trading at about 60 to 70% of the level that we were, but we're actually making a higher margin at the moment because we don't have all the accompanying costs of flying everyone everywhere, putting them up, renting classrooms, and all the other paraphernalia. So we went in a short period of time from initial period of panic, a decision to throw everything at this new way forward. And now we don't want to go back to the way it was. We want to try and desperately hold our clients to this model.
You said that you already had people who were accredited, who knew how to deliver this counselling at a distance. So you were moving in that direction, as you said. But your clients, I presume your courses are quite long, are they? So you were saying that you needed to come back and tell your clients effectively to come back and resume training with you. So they're professionally accredited. Do they run over a year or are they long-term?
They're quite a mixture. They run from the shortest course is 2 days in a classroom sense, through to a 1-week course for the next level up, through to a 9-month program that is a mixture of blended learning, classroom, or was classroom, and assignment work through that period. So they vary quite a bit.
So when your business development people went out, I presume they were saying to companies, more or less, they were reflecting your experience. They would all have done the same thing and said, where do we go from here? What on earth happens? The world has stopped. You know, somebody applied the brakes. How do we swim out of this? And then said, we are now pivoting to an online solution or a blended learning solution or something that will actually suit the people who are now at home and on internet. How have you found the difference in terms of both the delivery and the reception of those courses online?
In terms of the delivery, a lot of our team had to learn new ways very quickly. We had 1 or 2 people with a lot of experience. They were able to share that experience. So that side of things was fairly smooth. In terms of client response, it's been fantastic. I think it's clearly opening minds to new ways of learning and new ways of doing things. And whilst I don't doubt that some companies, when the situation allows, will just go back to traditional models, I think there's a lot of our clients are looking afresh at this now. I think some of them will stay with a mixture of online or virtual, or at the very least blended, to reduce the amount of time people are in a classroom. And I think it's also given us an opportunity in terms of direct client work, because we run a public schedule and also we do a lot of in-house work for clients. And in terms of the in-house work we do for clients, we're starting to experiment with different ways of scheduling the training. So instead of this concept of they come on a course and they're on it for a week and that's all they do, instead, to improve the learning experience, we're starting to spread those courses out instead over 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So they're spending a couple of hours a day instead learning, and then carrying on in their jobs for the rest of the time. And I think both the individuals and the companies are starting to enjoy that flexibility. And I think a lot of people have found that working from home has a lot of benefits, although it's there's new things to manage.
And in terms of the time then, are you still time fixed? So are you saying to people that the course will run from 8 to 10 for the sake of arguments? Or are you allowing them to come in kind of like if you missed the webinar, you can catch up on it later in your own time because you're across time zones? So certainly for public courses, it must be difficult to do it at a fixed time. And I'm also conscious that people at home, it's a very different environment. If you go to work, you literally go to a place where you're focused on work. If you're at home, you have the whole of life interrupting you as you go. So how have you managed that sort of time zone element?
Yeah, so in terms of time zones, we are still getting used to that. So we have got facilitators that are waking up very early in the morning or working later than normal in different time zones. And we need to work out how we're going to manage that in the longer term. In terms of the learning time for the virtual classroom courses, we tend now to keep that to 2-hour sessions. And then discuss with the clients or the individuals how they want those spread. And sure, if they miss one, then they can go back and look at the recording. So it's not a disaster. But it's also been interesting to see from the learner's perspective how they're changing their domestic environment to make this possible where they can.
And what kind of feedback have you had from them about? Is there a time of the day that suits best, or does it differ by location? I'm just fascinated by this stuff. Is there a pocket of people who say, actually, it has to be early morning because of whatever reason, and another pocket who say, oh, for God's sake, it's got to be late at night when the kids go to bed? Or are you getting any good sort of interesting statistical feedback?
It's because most of our work is in companies, so they've already got a group or a cohort they want to put through the training together, so they're sharing the experience. We're tending to agree times like between 10 and 12 and between 2 and 4, and occasionally both in a day, but often not, so that people only have to have that dedicated quiet time learning for a limited amount of time. But we also find that works well as well, because although we try and make it as interactive as it would be in a physical classroom, we feel that 2 hours is long enough to hold people's concentration, or you'll start to lose them. And we also make sure the group sizes are no more than 12, so that everyone can participate.
You anticipated my next question, which was, if you're going to sit there for 2 hours, how do I know that my questions will be answered, that it will be very much like a real classroom where I can catch your attention and get my question in, rather than a webinar that has 50, 60, 70 people on it, which usually ends with, thank you, there were lots more questions, but we never got to them. Okay, so you're keeping the numbers small. Is that a change, or did you always do that anyway?
In a classroom, we 12 is a good number, but we would allow it to creep up to 16, 17 if the demand was there. But we've got quite a rigid maximum of 12 with this.
And how have you found the physically looking at people from your trainer's point of view? So they're now looking at people who are at home doing all kinds of things. How have they found the difference? I spoke to somebody recently about the difference between talking in a classroom setting where you very naturally make eye contact with people and you know who you've lost or who's wandering off out the window. On a Zoom or a blended learning classroom, very difficult to keep that same satisfaction in your own head that you are actually catching everybody. How are your tutors finding it?
I think because of the limited number, they're finding it okay. I think initially, everyone was very conscious that this was new, both to the teacher, the facilitator, and the learner. And so I think there was a bit of flexibility provided with everyone. We found, for example, that it was a good idea to always start the session well before it's due to start, to give everyone time to sort their technology out the inevitable technology issues. But we've also found that people have gotten used to that, because generally in other parts of their work, they're spending a lot of time on online meetings as well, that culturally it's become easier for people. And I think that we've found a lot of sort of broad acceptance of some of the things that can occur. Someone unexpectedly running into a room and distractions are just a part of it. And people seem very tolerant at the moment of that. And I think that's because everyone is conscious that everyone's doing the best they can in an unusual environment at the moment.
Actually, that's very fair. Nobody can demand the same standards that they would have if they were the corporate and you were bringing everyone into a classroom, because everybody is caught in this very strange situation.
Yeah.
So from an examination point of view, then you're still caught with physical exams, are you?
No, we've had a lot of support from the professional bodies we work with. So the Association for Project Management, which is our main professional body, as I mentioned earlier, they forced their pace through and accelerated all their plans to get all their exams online. So now you can go from a short foundation course right the way up to becoming a chartered project professional, and everything in between. All those exams have suddenly gone online. So this has really opened up things for us even more, which is why the model is fantastic as far as we're concerned, because now we can actually go back and look again at internationalization. This barrier that we had of the physical exams has gone. And it's been one of the main things that's enabled all of this work to carry on. If people couldn't have done their exams online, they wouldn't have bothered doing all the training programs before it. They'd have put everything off. And I'm not sure where it would have been at that point.
If they hadn't actually put the exams online, then all the good work that you were doing might have been wasted, because clients would have said, but look, if we can't actually qualify, there is no point. Come back when we can qualify. So it wasn't your clients who were your key audience. It was the professional association who awarded. Wow. And you said earlier that you'd moved from sort of 10%, 15% of your business was online to now it's fully online. And that the difference is that your revenue is down 70% of what it was, which is actually remarkable in terms of the pivot that you've done, but that your profits are up. So you had an awful lot of the infrastructure for online learning in place already. It was really just a case of applying all of the tools that you had already effectively bought in, because a lot of companies would have found themselves developing an LMS system and figuring out how to put things onto a platform, and there's a massive amount of technology they need to buy in to do it. You already had it all in place, so it was just a case of ramping it up internally.
Yeah, that's very true. Yes, we got to a certain point in time where we were able to ramp it up really quite quickly, which was very fortunate.
Which was extremely fortunate. So for companies who were in the same position as you, or maybe further back than you were, so companies who looked at their business when COVID struck and possibly sat back and said, it will get better, I'll wait, this is a short-term thing, and have now realized it's not going to get better anytime soon, we need to ramp it up. What kind of advice would you give them if they were moving online? What are the sort of key things that you've learned that are different, or the roadblocks that you've reached?
Yeah, it's a very good point. We're in a number of different trade associations, and some of them are with other training companies. And it's been interesting to see the reaction. And a surprising number of companies certainly initially seemed to take the view of, okay, we'll just close for now, and we'll come out again when everything comes back. And what's becoming more and more apparent is everything might not come back in the way that it was, or in any reasonable timescale. So I think we're now seeing some of these companies changing their strategy quite quickly, because they realize this is going to be perhaps longer than they thought. In terms of the pure e-learning side, we have had a number of these products for quite some years, and what helped us get started quickly was originally for this was realizing that we had the subject matter expertise, but what we didn't have was the technology expertise and the online instructional design expertise. So initially for those products, we partnered with an external company, goodpractice.net in Edinburgh, who provided all of that experience and technology. and worked with our subject matter experts to develop those initial programs. And that's going back 4 or 5 years ago. In hindsight, that was a good move. It enabled us to develop professional products that worked in the marketplace. And along the way, we gathered the knowledge and the know-how, and then did some formal training and developed that. But I would appreciate that a lot of companies right now don't have the luxury of spending all that time and have limited budgets. In which case, I think you have to start somewhere. It is a question of gathering the expertise, but also working closely with the clients. And one of the things we've found is, in this unusual scenario, how open our client base is to having a grown-up conversation about what is the best way to keep things moving and keep training going, and come up with solutions with them as well. So I suppose my key takeaways, if you like, would be to work with expertise if you can, and collaborate and partner until you've gathered that expertise yourself, and to have open conversations with the clients, because we've found most of them desperately want to keep things moving, particularly where they've had furloughed staff, and to give them something to do and keep them engaged, and use this time in a productive way.
It's a super note to close on. Thank you for that conversation. I really enjoyed it.
You too.
That's what I have for you today. I'm Ellen Gunning. My business is the PR Training Academy, and this has been an EADL series brought to you to focus on EADL members around the world. I've been speaking with Tony Marks, the Chief Executive of 2020 Project Management, and I really enjoyed all those insights. Thank you for joining me. Until the next time, stay safe. Goodbye. Essential online training solutions for communications professionals. The PR Training Academy.